Probably not.
All right, guys, welcome.
Not really sure why it's so good right now.
Well, refresh, ready to go. No,
Slightly refreshed, ready to go.
it's not very often that I run into a new teacher that I can tell is a disaster and is not meant for education. And a couple years back, I did. I ran into a teacher, and no matter what we tried, it wasn't working. She went on Christmas break, and just like you, relaxed, was good. Came back the first day, and I don't think we had a Tuesday off, so it was like Monday, like yesterday. She was coming to my class, and already in tears and bawling and stressed out, like as if she had never gone on break. And it's one of the few people I've actually talked out of teaching, and just said, it's not for you. I didn't say it like that, but I said, is the stress worth it? Because it's not going to end until June. Is it worth it? You're going to pay a terrible cost to keep your job emotionally and physically. Because you know how much stress can tear you up. And it was already having a devastating effect on her. She lasted another 6 weeks, and then she resigned. And it was probably best for her and for the students. In fact, Jenny knows what I'm talking about, and they still tell stories about her on campus. How are you doing? One of the things that we were talking about today before you got here was that, and I know I'm stereotyping, but there is some kind of truth in most stereotypes, not all of them. One of my stereotypes that I have of you as teachers, especially first-year teachers, is that you were an overachiever in grammar school. You were the student that got great grades in junior high. You were allergic to B's and you got A's on everything. School was easy.
Not even.
And college was relatively easy because you learned by reading. And that's actually how I survived college. Many graduated cum laude, magna cum laude. I graduated praise the laude. All right, well, thank the laude anyway. And no, college was, the only way I got by was that I was able to read and remember. And if it was asking me to actually do something with the knowledge, I was in trouble. But I had it, and I could remember it, and I was able to muddle my way through college. So I got to grad school, and I was a straight A student. Found that it wasn't that I was dumb, I just lacked the proper motivation. And when I was in grad school, I knew that my success was important because my kids wouldn't eat if I failed. And so that was a pretty high motivation. Well, we also know that perhaps for many of you, this is the first time you really struggled with something. It's hard to replicate the experience that you've just gone through this last semester during student teaching. It's darn near impossible. As hard as we try to give you an honest feel for what it's like, there's just no way to put you through the stress that you've been through the last semester. The bad news is today you might feel like quitting, or maybe those that feel like quitting didn't come today. That's why we see these empty seats. We know statistically by data across the nation that first and second and third year teachers go through this disillusionment period right about now. Now, I will tell you, according to the data, so I'm not just giving you opinion, I'm giving you facts here. According to the data, you've already gone through the worst of it. So, just as like, did you know that December 21st is the winter solstice? It's the least amount of sunlight. We call it the shortest day, although every day has 24 hours. But it's the least amount of sunlight. Did you know from here, going forward until June 21st, that each day has a little more light? Have you already noticed a little difference? No. Each day you are gaining 2 or 3 more minutes of sunlight. Each day that you are teaching this semester, your load will become lighter by 2 or 3 minutes, if you can measure it that way. Okay? How many of you are second or third year teachers? How many can testify to what I'm talking about? The spring semester. The spring semester is easier than the fall semester for first year teachers. And the second year is by leaps and bounds, light years different than your first year. So second year, put your hands up again. Turn to your table and talk about the difference between your first year and your second year. Give them some hope.
And then my third year, it's first year was okay. There was a little struggle. Second year was awful. Third year, it's going good so far.
First year was god awful, but I also went to a school that had god awful people running it. They had zero clue what they were doing. And then the second year was like current year. So this, it's like it's better. My second, third than my first. My first year just in school was god garbage.
Yeah, mine kind of first year was the worst.
You're in your second year? Oh, okay.
My second year was bad just because I found it just really hard to handle it. I wasn't getting the support I needed from
First, second semester is not worse for you guys? Like contesting?
Yeah, it is kind of annoying because it's like you have so much you have to do, and then in the middle of the semester, there's testing. Like, what? I'm not getting anything done.
Because they're testing it on top of like a month. Like you can't teach them already burned out.
How dare you?
Personally offended. I know, it's not.
Offense every fiber of my being.
So I was trying to think of like first year too. I don't want to tired watching kids.
All right. So, is there some hope?
STC.
No,
No.
not a chance.
Special ed, yeah.
There is hope. I promise you. Here's another challenge you may be facing. I know my first 5 or 6 years of my career, I had a new teaching assignment every year. All right. Hey, you're teaching world history this year. Fantastic. Next year. Now you're teaching English. All right. Now you're teaching freshman English. All right. Now you're teaching junior English. All right. I mean, it was crazy. So every year. But eventually I got to a place where I got to teach the same thing year after year. And boy, by the third year, wow, this is fantastic. I walk over to the file cabinet, pull out, oh yeah, this is good, woohoo. And I was ready to go, and then I could start working on refining my lesson plans instead of just putting them together. How many of you write lesson plans for the week? Be honest, no one else.
Won't tell anyone.
Lessons, all right. Now,
I write it in my brain.
I get it, but I do think that planning ahead actually make your life easier instead of harder. Having a plan is easier than running into the copy machine on Monday morning going, I hope somebody left a crossword puzzle there. And grabbing it and go. The plan will help. We're going to help you with that over the next 3 sessions. We're going to be talking about lesson planning. And tonight is more theory. So you can hear a lot of background knowledge. And we gave you a handout because there was so much information I knew you wouldn't be able to write it down fast enough for UBI. Wait, put that slide back up. So we printed it for you. So tonight is theory. The next time you come, we're going to get into practical. And we're actually going to have you design some lesson plans, some new lesson plans, and we're going to try to get you into different grade groups and curricular groups. So you may be sitting next to somebody you don't know, but they're in the same teaching area that you're teaching. And you're going to actually practice that next week, next time you come, and I think it's February 5. Okay? And we're back to Monday night.
Oh, good.
Excuse me for just a moment. My Amazon package just got here. It was important to know that. All right, sorry guys. Okay, but let's review for just a moment. Teach twos. Talk about some of the teach twos that you used that were brand new to your class and how effective they were or didn't work. Did they work well or didn't work? What were some of the kind of struggles that you had in implementing those teach twos and what was really easy? So talk about that in your table groups because that was something we talked about last time, was using our teach twos to create new procedures in our classroom. We talked about having 100 procedures and 5 rules, remember? Just think of one new teach two that you tried after that lesson. How did it work? Because we actually had that as part of your homework on the Google Classroom. And what worked and what didn't work. And you may not all get a chance to share it because of time, but we'll try to let this go as long as we can. So in your table groups, talk about that.
Okay, go ahead.
New teach twos because we just came back, we just reviewed classroom expectations, and I did review the teach twos, like the two main ones for class. I'm sure you could just show them, like this is how you don't do it. And then one of them was the entry to class, and so they don't do it, I just like being as obnoxious as possible, actually kicked me out.
Today's been a lot of review on how to like set up. People actually, I have their chairs all set for them, but I leave the responsibility of getting their like music stands for themselves. So having them set like in a ready spot where like they're not playing during my talking.
Pretty much the same as her. I reviewed some of our classroom expectations, how they enter the classroom. How they're supposed to like voice levels, I'm talking, like bunch of the same stuff, are their iPads, how they get them, how they put them away. Just reviewed all of that.
I wonder if you guys can just slide that table.
The most I've had to sharpen.
There's 3 chairs right here. Maybe move or else you're gonna get scared.
Oh, I don't well, you refill it every time.
You guys put it right here.
I like my tub. I had the jar, and the jar was right. Like you tell the dough, and then you grab it. You're gonna be out. Put it in the dough. Grab the shark, and then the dough is always in there. You can sit with and the shark is always in there. It doesn't matter.
We don't want you to leave our group. We want to make
You just want it farther away.
separated.
You want any of the things I have?
I had a parent last year that really donated all these boxes and I just separated.
Talking about our teaching that
Unless they got a little pride in their own thing, right?
Because last year I was like, the boxes really clean, and they would rip it and then open them and then I think because they asked me to do this year if they could swing to I wonder if you literally practice typing it and I know W.
Are you guys having to reteach stuff? I mean, I know today's birthday back, but
Like, oh yeah, I know I'm
really?
supposed to like log in, and now he can just do it. He didn't even like need to see it.
Yeah. whatever, and I said, you think when you go back to Riley's real, be Democrat? And he goes, I made it again, and then I went back and said, okay, now you guys have a new carpet. And they got it.
They moved their stats and probability.
But I had to really hit it hard before Christmas. Like, we were like,
You can see where it pays off
yeah.
in the backside. It just doesn't. It's so tedious in the beginning. You did what? Oh, good. She says the hammer I have. Oh, right on. I will be back. I didn't want to come out this week because you had this back. And I thought, really? You're coming right now. So, I didn't want to piss everybody off.
Oh yeah, well we're still after right now. I don't know. She's because her medication. Like she's still in the but she had it before, but like it's I wonder if she's like.
I didn't expect it.
I think that was like more responsibility with that.
This arm is like, excuse me? She's like, I love You're not the only one who's there. Actually, there's not really more convenient. I'll eat when I get home. What's good for you? Oh. Flamingo's right there. If you turn, like, there's one thing in north. One thing in really? But they had elevators. Really? Like a torta with beans and avocados, I feel like tasting different. Oh, you take your
Alright, we spent a lot of time last time talking about rapport in your table group, so I know you're anxious to talk. That was a big group back there.
We're the best group.
So we know who to call on for volunteers. In your table groups, I want you to talk about rapport and how does that, we'll use that credentialing word you heard, lower that affective filter. Meaning, how does it engage a student when you are using the core? What does that mean? Talk about that in your table tips.
I have one student that if you don't have a corner in him, he is the most disrespectful, disobedient, he's gonna make a fuss about anything and everything in your class if he doesn't feel like it's more with you.
I feel like I have a foreign student that I didn't realize I had because apparently it was a nightmare every single one of the other teachers' classes, and I never had an issue with this kid. I mean, he didn't like to do work. I'd be like, I need to write this down. So he was a good kid for me, and I was surprised to hear he was a nightmare in these other kids' classrooms. I was very happy. I was like, yeah.
I'm really good at calling my kids. My mom's in elementary school like that, and then they call her the bad kid whisperer. And I think this kind of carried on to me because I have really good rapport with all the kids that everybody can't stand. So they'll do stuff for me. And I think it's because I'm not that much older than them.
About 1 more minute.
What? Even like mad adult. You know, like I was on the so it's like I'm ready to
One of my kids dropped me. And
when you start now.
Especially kids. There's some kids that feel like you can't build rapport no matter how much.
then when she asked me, he went, what? I don't think he's
It's hard to have really good rapport and not feel like I'm gonna because I have kids who like they're not my students anymore, but they were, and now they see me and they're like way too familiar, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna teach you anymore, but there is still a line that was kind of, you know, so cute. Like calling me by my first name. Like, I know I'm not your teacher anymore, but seriously.
That's funny. Like I have teachers now that like in high school that I still call me service, and they're like, you call me so and so. He introduced himself as Steve recently. Steve. So.
Like, I don't remember junior high or my elementary band teacher asked me to call her by first name. You're an adult? But yeah, even now, my high school teachers are my favorite one. I still call him Dr. T.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, this time, instead of table groups, I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk. So you need to pick a partner. And I want you to think about the homework assignment that we gave you and looking at your personality test. You were supposed to do a personality test as part of your homework. I want you to talk about your style with your partner and what implications does that have for your teaching in classroom. Go.
Well, there was like a separate link that they sent us, but it didn't really like define your personality so much as like. There was that one, but there's also like one that we analyze ourselves, like our personality. Sort of, but it wasn't that. Agreeableness.
I don't know what the questions are, but I'm a dog. I was like drawing myself this morning.
And personality.
Did you get out today?
You did?
She was
Yeah, that's stuff like that. Like my kids, my kids, they're like, you are very different, chipper in the morning. I don't understand.
Some of them roll their eyes so hard.
That's what I wish I could have.
They're like, hi, how are you?
With the dog kids though, they're very
I'm also a fan of Deadpool, and so I think it's more like, I will give it a Christmas I'm on whatever James is on all the time.
Okay, wrap it up.
You know what Pettit told him when our a little bit off topic? He said your spirit animal was a raccoon.
5, 4. Very good. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, and we're going to talk about learning styles. This is on your handout. I even remembered a whole bunch at this time. And so we're going to look at 3 learning styles and their implications for your classroom.
So, most of you probably know what your tendency is. I was very, ironically enough, I was very auditory. And now that I'm older and I've lost my hearing, I'm terrible at auditory. And true story, they gave me a test one time. They said, I'd had a stroke, and did I tell you guys this? And they were going to do me a test to see how much, I wanted to know how much damage had been done. And so the guy goes, well, look, I have to give you a attention deficit, an ADD test first. And I go, I'm a teacher, I don't have ADD. I go, okay. And he said, so there'll be 2 tests. The first one's 15 minutes, the second one's 30. And he said, you'll take the first one, and then we'll move right into the second one. And then afterwards, I'll meet with you. Okay, I got that. First test, they put me in this office, the lights go down. Okay, don't do that with me, because if I have an opportunity to sleep, I'm going to sleep. They put it down, and I was supposed to click the mouse if I heard or saw a 1. Apparently, 2 minutes in, I zoned out. And they came in after the first 15-minute test. The doctor comes in, and I go, I thought you weren't coming until after the next test. And he goes, let's go talk. He said, you are off the charts, attention deficit. And I'm like, what? So then they started drugging me and seeing if we could get the test scores better. No. Turns out anything that has to go through my hearing, I just shut down. I don't hear you. I'm done. Which is terrible as a teacher. But that was my story. But in high school, I could sleep and hear what was being said and remember it. And I did sleep in high school. So it changes. My point in that is you can change. And of course, I think most people enjoy the tactile, doing it, because we tend to remember more when we do that. So there's 3 different kinds, technically, of learning: auditory, visual, and tactile. You probably cross over into 2 of them, possibly all 3, but most of you will find, because you are going to be doing a little test to see what you are, most of you will be 1 to 2 of those pretty strong. This is the test. So if you have you guys have your phones too. If you go to that link, it's only 20 questions. I'll give you guys 5-10 minutes. And it'll tell you what you supposedly are. Say again? I don't think so. I think you have to try to pick the most applicable.
Oh my god, so obvious.
Good.
Actually, a very large degree of what do you call it, differential.
How do you submit them? Because I have to pick these ones.
You said yours is?
How do we submit them? What do you mean? Like it's not.
I love this stuff. I just
I don't have one.
You want me to see?
There's no like. Is it already going there?
Here. Yeah, it looks like it's loading.
I was thinking of the word it doesn't make sense. Why would it hear
Is everybody almost done or close? Okay, so with your elbow partner, you guys are already doing it. So, what did it say about you? Do you agree? I know some of you, I know at this table, some people didn't agree. And then what type of activities did you enjoy as a student? So think about that. If you're auditory, what kind of stuff did you like to do as a student? I think sometimes Steve brought this up too, is some of you were probably the overachievers and school was easy. Most people that go into teaching, either school was easy for them or they were the nightmare. And so you were one of the two. You know, I got into it because I was the nightmare. And I knew that my history classes shouldn't have been that boring, so I was going to make them fun. I don't know if that happened, but that's what I thought I was going to do. So, activities, you know, I loved napping, but that wasn't part of learning. So I had to, you know, what kind of stuff did you enjoy doing? Take about a minute or two and talk with your elbow partner or your table about that.
I think I like
I like to go
I hated it because you had to change clothes. I could have just not, you know, I could have come in these nuts and stayed That's a different part of your brain, though.
Maybe I just kind of didn't understand it the same way.
It's
One
your
of the
kids
things that they keep saying
She can study music, she
visual
can
and
do all
auditory,
that.
they give
She,
flashcards like
everything is music, music, music.
I do it, but that's what you found. Like, I used to actually learn what I need to do. I just I guess it's basically the same thing. I try to use it in the context rather than just here's the definition only over and over again. And I like doing music, so I guess it makes sense in a
I can't either. Like I feel like I have to
Yeah, I think you use it for like a different, there's a different process behind it. Like it's the same
You have to read the
thing.
tape.
Visual one, like just looking at it and then looking at it.
Okay,
Versus
wrap it
the
up.
auditory one, looking at it, reading it, then looking at it, reading it again.
Ancient Chinese secret says, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, but I do and I understand. And one of the, I always think about these and I go, yep, because I was a horrible student, horrible. But when I started teaching it, all of a sudden I knew it better, and then like Steve had said, as a grad student I was a 4.0. High school I could barely get there. So I mean, it's all about like when I start teaching it, I remember it. And I, not only that, but I believe in it. When as a student I was kind of like, yeah, there's no point in grammar. And now I'm like the grammar Nazi, so, you know, I get that, I understand, and I'm sure you guys do too, because we did this a lot in AVID, is you make sure that they're doing, and that they're teaching, and that they're verbalizing it, because kids tend to remember more when they activate those parts of their brain. So this is there's a lot, but you guys have it in front of you, and I actually cut a lot of it. But visual, you're a reader, you like seeing pictures, makes sense. You understand and remember things by sight. So if I threw 5 things up, said remember this, you'd be the one that could remember it. Me, the minute you took it off, I'd forget it was even there. You can picture what you were learning in your head. This is my biggest weakness. Like, I coach softball and we have those little bow nets. They're like nets that the kids can hit into. I've been doing this for 3 years. I still, every time I go to put the net together, just sit there and stare at it. Until one of the kids comes and does it, because I can't do it. I can't visualize things. You like to see what you are learning. You are usually neat and clean. That tells you right there that's not me. You often close your eyes to visualize. And you will be looking for something if you're bored to watch. You might have your phone. I mean, my kid, I swear, I don't know what they watch on YouTube all the time, but she's always got her face in her phone watching something. And she'll sit there and laugh. And I'm like, what's funny? And she'll show it to me and I don't think it's funny. I'm like, that's not funny. That's stupid. But she thinks it's funny. You may have difficulty with spoken directions and easily distracted by sounds. And you are attracted to color and spoken language, like stories. Especially when it's rich in imagery. Makes sense, right? So what about you or these kids? Now I want you to think. You've done this test. You just talked to somebody about what you liked as a kid. Okay, now you're going to see, you've got your kids that are visual learners, this is what they need to be doing. They need to be in the front of the classroom. Why? So what?
So they can see and focus.
Focus. If you're in the back of the room, there's all these things to look at. Back of heads, oh, she's got purple hair, whatever. Using flashcards, try to visualize things that you hear or things that are read. Write down keywords. Draw pictures. That's a big one. That's the one where you can do it with vocabulary. You can do it with concepts. You can do it with, trying to think. Vocabulary, we did it a lot. We also did it with math, which is kind of weird. It was an avid thing. If I had a problem and I'd be up here fixing my problem, I had to write out the steps. So like if the first step was process of elimination, I'd have to write step 1, process of elimination. And by writing that, I'm understanding the process better and breaking it down instead of just going from problem to answer. I'm having to explain how I got to where I'm at. Color code things. This is another big Avid thing. How many of you are familiar with the Avid, the Cornell notes? And then you highlight, right? And ideally, you highlight vocab in one color, you highlight key terms in another color, because this activates a different part of your brain. Avoid distractions during study times. When I was younger, man, I could listen to music, have a TV going on, I could be on the phone, and I could still get, maybe not very well, but I got my work done. Now that I'm older, I can't have anything. I've got to be zoned. I can't have anything on. I can't have anything shiny around me, or I get distracted. I mean, I'm not a very good visual. So, this is what your students who are visual learners need to be doing. Now think about that. You probably have a kid that popped right into your head, oh yeah, this kid's visual. Is this happening for them? Auditory is the hearing. You learn by hearing and listening. That's the kid. They can be doing 18 things and still hear what you're saying in the lecture. Okay? Understand, remember things that you've heard. You store information by the way it sounds. So music would be a huge catalyst for that student. You have an easier time understanding spoken instructions. You learn by reading out loud. You've got that kid. You've got that kid in the back of the room. I've seen him in some of your classrooms that has to read out loud, right? And they don't even realize that they're reading and maybe bothering anybody else because they are so focused on what they are reading. Auditory learner, you probably hum or talk to yourself or others if you become bored. I'm not an auditory learner, but I sure spend a lot of time talking to my animals. And you may think people think you're not paying attention because you're doing a million different things. But the fact is, as long as your ears are engaged, that person's remembering. And you guys are probably, some of you, how many of you are auditory learners in here? Yeah. Not a surprise for teachers?
We were talking over here, and my wife would say I'm not an auditory learner. I told you that last week.
That was last week.
They said it was a male thing. I said
Selective hearing as well.
I'm accused of that often.
Yeah.
Often. So our auditory students, that kid that is the music kid, make sure they sit where they can hear, obviously. Flashcards, stories, they need to hear it. Instead of just pointing to your thing and saying, like, Page 33. You can't just point. With this kid, you've got to verbalize it. So point for the kid that's visual and say, page 33. My running joke, though, is you have to say everything 3 times. Because the minute you say it, then somebody over here goes, what did you say? And then somebody over here says, what did you say? And so you can say, I'm going to say it 1 time. And then you point. Record yourself spelling words. Listen to the recording. I've never even thought of that. For the kid that is struggling with spelling, have them say it and then listen to it. Never even thought of that. Have test questions read to you out loud. Is that realistic all the time? No. But when you're having a quiz, or maybe when you're doing a checking for understanding, you could read those and have it stated. Have it in front of them also, though. And study new material by reading it out loud. Same thing. Questions on that? Anybody? Make sense?
So if you have a visual learner next to an auditory learner, and the visual, oh yeah, but they're talking, and then the auditory's like, I'm lost.
That's true. Yeah. Or if you have a talker like me, and I'm that teacher that in staff meetings was in the back, texting everybody up front and all that kind of stuff. I was that annoying person. So if you were trying to listen, you didn't want to sit by me. Tactile. I think everyone benefits from tactile, except for that painfully shy child that does not want to have to talk to their classmates, right? And they would just rather be in the back. And we'll talk about how to deal with that kid. Because I always felt for that kid, because there wasn't a point in my life where I was that painfully shy. Tactile, learn by doing, learn by touching. It's that kid, my partner's this way. We cannot walk anywhere where she's not messing with something. Like if there's something like this quick stuff, she would pick it up and have to play with it. And I'm like, God, do you have to touch everything? Just leave it. But tactile people do. You understand and remember things through physical movement. So let's say you're doing spelling and you have those cards, maybe letter cards, and you have them get up and have to stand in order and spell. They will never forget that. Not only is it a cool activity because you don't have to actually sit up here and talk, they're up doing stuff, but they also are doing things, and that's what's going to remember. They're going to remember it. And frankly, most kids are going to remember that. Hands-on. You need to be active. Take frequent breaks. There's always that kid that is sitting and he just can't sit still. And I've always told that kid, I'm cool with you standing up in the back as long as you don't distract anyone. Because they can't sit still, especially boys. A lot of them cannot sit still. You speak with your hands and gestures, like you're Italian. Take things apart, put them back together, tend to find reasons to tinker. Or when you're bored, that's the person that takes apart their pen. And all of a sudden you have the spring going flying across and all those things going on. That's that kid. Very well coordinated, usually athletic. Can remember things that were done, but may have difficulty remembering what they saw or heard. And you often communicate by touching. You appreciate physically expressed forms of encouragement, such as a pat on the back. You've also got the kid who doesn't want you to touch them at all. That's why you need to know your kids, right? You need to know your kids. You also need to know their culture, because some of their culture rules can really be. I didn't realize, I'm not even sure what culture it is now. I want to say Hmong. But if you use red ink on their papers, it is disastrous. It's traumatic. And I never thought of that. I never used a red pen anyway, but I never really thought about the effect it could have on somebody, because that's not where I came from. So remember that. And remember, we're going to talk about why this is important for you to know about your kids in just a sec.
Hold on a second. How many of you have used the graphic organizer where the word is written in the center and you have a line like this and you have to write the definition and a synonym and an antonym and you have to draw a picture, right? I was teaching KC English for students that had flunked the high school exit exam and had to pass. They were now juniors. There were, I believe, 7 questions on the test that were solely related to vocabulary. All right. How do you teach enough vocabulary to juniors? Well, it is impossible, but I did what I could. And we went through from the reading that we were doing, we had 5 vocabulary words every week. And when I first started doing this, the scores were out of 5 questions, 2s and 3s. Aye. So I don't know why I figured it out. We had a Promethean board, and I had a writing group. And so on Monday, these were my writers, and the rest of the kids, they were on the computer, and I would spin my little thing, and whoever it pointed to would have to come up, and they'd take the word and they would drag it to the definition. And even if the kid didn't come up to the board to drag it, seeing the kid drag it still put it in a different part of their brain, and scores went up from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. I have data that showed that just doing this, because now they're standing, there's all kinds of studies about having your arms crossed or your legs crossed or all kinds of weird things that relate to tactile. But y'all have, and this is chow chilla for everybody, y'all have one of these boards in your room, you know?
No.
Most of you do, some of you do. If you have one, use it. And not the way we're using it today, where we're using it to instruct you, but for students to come up here and write on your board. When they come up here, they are operating with a tactile sense, but they're also using auditory, because they have to read, and they're also having to see it, and they're writing it, and then they have to hear it as the guys discuss it in class. Now we're getting all 3 styles at once. When you flip this from being an instrument of delivery to an instrument of learning, and when you start using technology as a learning tool, it'll transform kids. Plus, they'll learn about this board. If you're afraid of this board because you don't know anything about it, they'll learn you. They'll teach you.
They will.
Right? They'll figure it out. Haven't you figured that they know they're native tech people?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, Mr. T, you gotta push this button down here, and it resets it, and you align it. So then when you're writing over here, right, how do I fix this? And the kid comes up and goes, oh man, how'd you do that? What's this button for? And they know all that. So, see if you can flip this from being an instrument of delivery to an instrument of learning.
That's it, yeah.
And I think it's different than using the iPad or the Chromebook at your desk. There's something magical, seriously, about standing up and doing it in front of the class. There's something magical about it.
Well, it's an empowerment too, and the kids are owning it. They're up here, they're sharing. It's a big. I mean, I quote Avid and refer to Avid quite a bit, but I loved the stuff that they taught because they involved everyone, and they involved all your senses, and they expected you, the kids, to take ownership of their learning, which is exactly what we want, right? So with this, I mean, anytime you can have the kids get up, vote with their feet. You all familiar with that? Like, if you like Pepsi, go there. If you like Coke, go over here. And then you can either keep it really basic, depending on your kids and how mature they are. I had a group of kids that had been together for 4 years, and so we did the whole step up to the line that was on Freedom Riders. And it went from Pepsi to Coke, Doritos to Lay's to Giants and Dodgers, which that didn't go well. But anyway, as they're coming up, then I said, one of them was, how many of you have had your power cut off before? And it was kind of cool to see the kids walk up and look over and be like, there's the rich kid, they thought, rich kid, who had their power. All of a sudden there was commonality, and it wasn't, nobody said a word. They weren't allowed to say a word. They just had to do it. You either stepped up to the line or you stayed back. And then when it was over, I said, okay, we're done. And they're like, no, let's do some more. So they started coming up with the topics. How many of you have brothers and sisters in the military? How many have lost a relative to drugs? I mean, we were all crying. We were wrecks. But the whole point was they found, first of all, they were up and doing it. And second of all, they were finding commonalities, which broke down those walls that we have. Teenagers are the worst about them. But so here you got tactile. Anything, anytime you can get them getting up, doing something, moving around, whatever, I think that is key, especially for the kid like me, who if you leave me sitting still for a few minutes, I'm going to be asleep. Tactile students, they need to participate, they need to move around. We just talked about that, hands-on. There's an activity that I did. I learned it at an Avid conference, and I'm an English teacher. Had nothing to do with English, but I thought it was such a cool idea. we did, you know those pipe insulation, the foam? You cut it in half, it's a track. And they were given 12 of those and paper clips. And they had to create a double looped roller coaster. And the marble had to stay on there. Beforehand, before they did anything, they just had the supplies there. And I said, okay, write what you think, if this is going to work, and how you're going to be able to do it. And most of them were pretty short in the, you know, the original write. Then they did it, and then when they were done, I said, okay, now I want you to tell me, how did it work? What were your failures? What were your successes? And who took the lead? Well, they had a lot more to say then. And I'm telling you, I had roller coasters coming off the ceiling. I had them off the bookshelves. But they started to realize, they didn't realize what they were doing, but they realized that you had to have momentum to get that marble up and around. And so then we can talk about it, about how do you get that momentum. That's physics, and that's advanced thinking. But they were having a blast. They didn't care. They were just making, you know, we've done it with spaghetti and marshmallows. And they had to build the strongest bridge that would hold my cell phone. And if it didn't hold my cell phone, you didn't win. And that became a big deal too, because again, you're talking about physics. And here I was an English teacher that had nothing to do with what I was doing, but Abbott, I could get away with it anyway, so. Tactile students, the kid that's always rocking in his chair. The kid that has to chew gum, the kid that has to have the fidget spinner. Not that you have to allow it, I'm just saying that's that kid. Frequent breaks. We talked about this, shaking your foot. Some kids just shake their foot or their leg. I'm that person. And I probably will annoy everybody at the table, but I have to be doing something or I fall asleep. So that, I guess now I've become a tactile student because I don't have a very good attention span. Anybody have any comments on this or on these three? Hopefully you're seeing kids, you're already thinking of your kids that fit into these different categories. We're going to give you guys a 10-minute restroom break. Yeah. And then we'll come back and we'll deal with this on how to do lesson plans with this. Ready? Break. Sorry, I almost took you out with my chair. Well, yeah. I mean, it does, but how do you control that though? With her. She's different. Good word. Well, yeah, and she knows that there's something going on with the family, and then she's had some issues with. To know what? That's ridiculous.
Actually, I thought she was harder than
I was fighting
No, I'd be fighting if I wasn't going to talk to you. We need to bring a Keurig. Steve, get on that. We need a Keurig in here.
I actually have one next door.
Yeah, no.
We're moving next door.
Yeah, you probably shut up, huh?
Chicken dinner.
Well, you get used to it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You better hope they don't get giddy hands. They're like, they're funny looking chicken kind of, but they make the worst noise. And if somebody drives up, they're like an alarm clock.
No, because I was like, well, I think my
Oh, we have chickens. We have roosters. Not in the middle of town, I don't get that. You're not supposed to, I don't think you're allowed to have a rooster in the middle of the city. You can have hens, but not roosters. Oh, really? And you're limited on how many dogs too, right? Okay. Yeah, Fresno, we couldn't have more than 4. Oh, Fresno, yeah. Call city.
What is the bad adults that I get along the way? Just out of curiosity. You're not bad.
I'm tired of this.
I wasn't grouchy before.
We have the most beautiful.
Teenagers long enough, you get a sense of sarcasm
He does. He crows from
you can't get rid of.
the middle of the night. But when she,
They have like,
and he is so pretty, and he was beating up this one hen, but now we added more, and now
I got 2 new kids in my 6th
they
period.
start laying
I got
now.
a I got 2 new ones that are like, no, they were just moved from like ELD 1 to like ELD 2. And they like spoke to me in Spanish.
Well, and see,
like they are.
the hen is,
Well,
but the three babies.
one of them started like
And it's winter.
in Spanish,
We have a heat lamp
and
in
another one that he just met, and like jokingly cussing, and I was like, "Hi, excuse me, that's not gonna happen in this class." And he's like, and I was like, I told him in Spanish, I was like, "That's not gonna happen in this class, and that's disrespectful towards me. So what do you have to say?" And he like apologized or whatever.
We have a it's kind of
Don't let it happen again.
our pigs have our
You want me at your house?
Don't understand.
Yeah. So
we have this pew, this little pew that my sister gave me, and they sleep under the pew with their little
So,
lamp.
and he
And then
also
we have
like,
another one that runs the property, but she has a little
whereas I'm
bed
like,
she made,
but
and she has her
but then they're also not intimidated by me either. But then this other kid starts like chiming
our
in
outdoor cats have one
on like how they were joking, and I'm like,
in the garage.
I looked at him and I was like,
But you know, I felt bad. And then our poor little donkey sitting up there.
like shocked and like offended and like his feelings were. I was like,
We live where, like, poor we always said, oh, rest of the I don't think that was because it was bad. Because I'm the one that's doing it.
And he was doing like
And
the same exact things.
I know we were so excited we got rid of one dog to first and then we got rid of the second dog.
No. I'm not doing this for this semester.
We got rid of 2. We
And I'm trying to be nice.
and the other one was
So I sat him down and I said, "You just barely passed and you're doing the same stuff again. You need to grow up. Seriously.
Oh yeah, no. Let somebody else
This
take
stuff
care of
is
it.
gonna get old. It's not gonna fly with the teachers. It's not gonna fly with
Miranda's like,
grow up, get your stuff done, and deal with it because it's not gonna get easier." And he goes, and I'm like,
Miranda does
yeah,
feed,
sort of
but
thought.
she doesn't take
We'll
care
see
of
if it works. Probably not.
I mean, it'll probably work for like a while. Because I feel like I've been doing that for a while, and I was like, yeah, okay.
What about you? Like, this is a kid who like would do a writing assignment and it takes us like 2-3 days to do a writing assignment. He sits and stares at the wall for 2-3 days for 55 minutes. I'm like, oh, the empty.
I would imagine. It's a tough day.
And I said that.
Like yesterday was meetings, right?
I asked them,
Those were words for me.
reach your hand if you didn't really like the degree.
I'd rather be in my classroom running around.
Raise your hand. And they like, a couple of them were like, you gave me a B. You gave me a C. And I was like, okay. Okay. You gave me a D, and I
Is that a love note?
No, I was
And I was like, okay. So if you didn't like your grade,
no, it's not.
do
I'm like, how funny? It was a good one. Share it.
every single thing I assign is meant to be completed. You should do it on time, not 4 weeks later.
I have like a 13 wants to go back to Mexico, and she really doesn't want to go. So like, I feel really sad because my grandparents took care of me for 15 years, but I want to learn English and finish. I want to go to high school. My parents won't let me go to this school. Please, teachers, do something and let them give me permission so I can go to this school. I want to learn more English. But my parents want to go to Mexico. Please, can you do something?
So yeah.
I don't want to go to Mexico.
It was
I
like
want
a
to go
bit
to
of a
this
hard
school.
one. It was a hard talk that I would have liked to have had. But I was at the point where I'm like,
Before I go back
not doing this again.
I'm a good student and you're a good teacher.
Oh my god.
Because, okay, he's a one teacher, and he's just used to people just, leaving him alone because they're like, oh, I can't get through them, I'm leaving him alone. Like,
Oh yeah, it's a great lesson, but I didn't do it.
I would have the.
Like, I know I had like support with them, right? Some of them like final tasters, like
Probably can't talk to
their
dad.
final personal narrative like thing, and they like opened up about it. But then they also very like, so I'm like, excuse me, Velasquez, sorry, and I'm like, boo. We're not calling anyone boo. We're not calling anyone bruh. We're not calling anyone like the B word.
I say bruh all the time. It's mostly when someone does do something that's like really just like, what the heck? I just go like,
I just, when they're complaining, you know what I mean? And it's not casual, it's aggressive, like me, or you're addressing someone, but it's in the context of representing in the class or something like that. Like, I'm like, I don't have a problem with the word bruh. I don't have a problem with profanity. But this is not the place for it. Like, this is not where you use it.
I told my kids all the time, like, there is a time and a place, and if you can't say it in church or you can't say it to your mother, then you do say it here. And if you're telling me that you do say it to your mother and you do say it in church, then I am really sorry.
She's totally the DACA kid. You know, like, that's where we're
And
stuck.
that kid that the last PS report I
I mean, all you can, dad will have
and that's what you told me, right? Oh, yeah, I told you that. Yeah. I'm like, ugh, and then I saw him today.
They didn't do anything.
No, he still hasn't had a haircut.
So what about,
I don't think so. When I was in there, well, you were in his IEP meeting, right? I was there. It seemed like
No, I couldn't make it. I was headed over there, and Estella was like, or Cristela was like, it's just ended.
the mom. She's one of those ones where you can definitely tell she wants to give up the impression that she cares. And say like, oh, he will be doing all of this during after school and stuff like that. Obviously nothing got done, right?
I don't think he needs like a hard lesson. He needs someone to care, ask him how his day was. Like, he's not a bad kid. He's just like so desperate for attention that like he'll do whatever, you know. He talks to himself all day long.
And it's like I said, he likes an audience.
But if I sit around who are gonna ignore him, like what you could do, who I'm like,
alright, let's get going. We're not keeping you the whole time tonight. Be sad about that, I know. Okay. I have a copy of this and I'll have to put it on our classroom because I wasn't that sophisticated this afternoon. But one of the things I stole from somebody was a simple questionnaire, and I had high school kids, so it was fairly easy for them to answer it. But I also started, for a long time I just did the kid questionnaire. But you don't really get necessarily all you want. So I started doing a parent questionnaire too. What are your kids' strengths? What do they enjoy? What do you value most about your child? I mean, and it really gave, it was crazy to me how much insight it gave me to the parents' relationship with their child, how involved they were, and things that the kid didn't want you to know. You know? Like, if the kid has, they're not on a 504, but they have maybe some issue. The parent will tell you. Whereas, and it's good for you to know. Case in point, I have a friend who has a child here in this district. Their family was a central family, and we called them the Redneck Mafia, but we won't. And now they're all grown up, and they're parents. And this one, her daughter has anxiety issues. And there was a mistake in some testing. The daughter had accidentally left her notebook out. 4.0 kid. Was not intentional. She got dragged to the office, accused of cheating, and then the teacher came back and said in front of the kids she was cheating and basically put her out on blast. And where was I going with this?
Anxiety.
Yes, that's it.
What we don't know.
And I said to the mom, who used to be my student, I'm like, does the teacher know that this kid has this issue? Is she on a 504? Well, no. Does she know that this child has the issue? Well, I think so. Well, I think so isn't really fair. I go, you know, you got 30 kids. You can't assume we know that this kid has an anxiety issue. Long story short, if the parent had been able to communicate that, 504 or not, most of us are human enough that that would be in the back of our head, and we probably wouldn't call a kid out like that. Most of us probably shouldn't call a kid out like that ever, but it happens. So with these questions, I mean, they can be simple, because you're not going to get, you know, if you give a parent a 75 question questionnaire, you're not getting it back. So make it simple. I had, like, for the kid, what was your favorite class? What was your worst class? What do you do in your free time? You know, I want to know that the kid's a gamer. I want to know that they play soccer. I want to know that they're in leadership or an FFA. You know, obviously I'm referring to kids that are in the high school, but elementary school, you want to know if your kid likes to draw, right? Or they love music, or whatever. It's important for you to know that, because you don't want to be that teacher who does the same lesson plan every year for every class, the exact same. Don't be that teacher. Every time you do a lesson, you should be tweaking it, changing it, but every lesson you do should be unique to the class that you have. I had classes that really, the best they could do was writing. That was what they liked doing, that's what they did, and that was the only way they were controlled. Then I had other kids, like I said, with the roller coaster. We'd have the coolest activities going on, and conversation, and discussion, and writing, and it depended on the class. And you can't force, you know, a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work. So instead of forcing it, adjust it, and know your kids. So the questionnaire goes home, and the parents come back, and you get it, and it says, you know, I'm really hoping you'll motivate my child. Well, that tells me right there that the kid has had trouble with teachers before. Okay? Or, we work a lot, and we're not able to help them, but we do everything we can. Boom, now you know that situation. These parents are obviously very involved, love their kids, but they were working all the time. The one I liked was, I always add this at the bottom, is there something you want me to know? And usually that's when you'll find out, husband and I just got divorced, dad died last year from cancer. You're going to get huge information on that one question that you need to know. Because that kid who dad died last year may have shown no signs of it that first year, but for the next 5 years, that kid's going to show something. And any of you that have lost somebody close to you, know it hits you from behind, you don't see it coming, and sometimes these kids don't know how to handle their emotions. When Schindler's List came out, I don't know, some of you probably weren't even born, but it came out and it was in the theaters. And there were a group of kids who nervously laughed. They didn't know what else to do. They didn't understand the Holocaust. They didn't really get the whole gravity of the whole thing, and they giggled. Well, there were some Jewish people in the audience, and it became a huge deal. Huge deal. And Spielberg got involved and all that because, and the argument was, those of us that worked with kids were like, they weren't trying to be jerks. They didn't know what else to do. You know, the kid that laughs at the funeral. They don't know what else to do. They're not mature enough yet to know how to handle their emotions. So the kid who lost their father, which is very common, or mother, that we have that, or an uncle or brother who was murdered. These kids do not know how to deal with that in a healthy way. And even if they did, those emotions aren't logical to anyone, even adults. So be aware. If you get that, that's a huge flag for you. And if you come in one day and the kid's just being a total ass to you, you need to realize it's not you. It's not about you. This kid is dealing with stuff and he doesn't know what else to do, or her. And you, 1 minute of compassion, 1 second of, hey, I know you're having a tough day. If you want to put your head down, it's cool. I get it. You know how far that's going to go? And I was that kid that, I still am. I'm not a kid, I'm old. But if I'm emotional and I'm not in a position where I feel like I can show it, I get mad. Very mad. Very angry. When I was 14, I was a freshman, and my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And my parents were big time involved, the whole bit. And I was blown away. I was 14. Remember when you were 14? I was an emotional nightmare. On top of the fact that I was dealing with being gay and all this other stuff, I didn't have a grip on reality at all. Then they come home and tell me my mom's got cancer and she's got a 20% chance of living. I remember them telling me that, and I walked straight upstairs and started bawling. But anytime I came down with my mom, I was strong. Because in my head, I don't want to upset her more. But in her mind, I was being unemotional and distant. And I remember I went to school, and there was this teacher that we were all afraid of. She's like this tall. And I get called to her classroom. I'm like, oh, Miss Moat wants to see me. I'm in so much trouble. So I go over, and she seriously, I was this tall then. She was like, I'm looking down at her. And she's like, my dad just died of cancer. I want you to know I'm here for you. I didn't even know this lady. She said, I want you to know if you ever need anything, you just come talk to me. I never went to her for it, but the fact that she reached out and told me that meant everything. Everything. First of all, I didn't know how she found out. I mean, I'm a small town, but you know, as a kid, you don't know how they all find out. And I thought, you know, that resonated with me. I had her 2 years later as an anatomy teacher, and I had open heart surgery that year. And she knew I was having open heart surgery, and we were doing the cardiovascular system. Well, I'm that person that if I'm going to go into something, I want to know everything about it. So I had done my research. I'd interviewed people. I'd done all this research. I knew exactly what was going to happen when I had my surgery. She was showing a video. She goes, Jenny, if you want to go home, you don't need to watch this. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And I left. But how considerate that she recognized that. Because she knew that I was having surgery the next week. And she didn't want to throw me off. I mean, that's a considerate teacher, and she's one of the reasons why I went into teaching, was because of people like that. So that said, questionnaires are going to give you the information you need to know about your kids. Will you get them all back? No. Will the kid be honest? Probably not. Okay, they'll tell you what they're into. They'll tell you what they like. You could even ask something silly like, what's your favorite soda? Log it away, and maybe one day if this kid's having a really bad week, you know, bless you. So anyway, the questionnaires, huge. I would do them now. Normally I would do them in the first week of school, but obviously past that. But you guys could do that now. You will be doing that, that's your homework. But and I will put the ones that I have on the classroom. But send it out, see what you get back. With that, research and know your kids. You get this back and it says music, you're going to know your kid that are gamers, athletes, readers, right? You're going to have this plethora of information. Use it. Don't just get them and file them in a folder. No, I don't expect you, I mean, some of you are probably very much chart people or graph people. That's way too organized for me. I would just basically take my papers and look and sort them and go, okay, these are my gamers, these are my music kids, these are my, so that I know what most of my kids are interested in. And then I would gear my activities towards that. Because you give me something that is engineering, because I told you I can't even put a net together. You give me something like that, I'm done. I'm going to be sitting immediately going, how can I screw this person up? Right? Or I'm going to be making jokes. I'm going to do everything except what you want me to do. So, but if you give me something that is verbal or acting, right, I'm going to be all over it. So, do you have to have one assignment to achieve one goal? No. You can do a variety of things and hit the interest of your kids. If they're interested, they're not going to screw around. If you force them to do something they're not interested in doing, you're going to have problems. Be excited. If you're not excited about it, they're not going to be excited. If you walk in and go, oh, we're doing Shakespeare today, yeah, they're not going to buy it. But if you walk in and go, hey, we're going to talk about a guy today who is so obsessed with sex that, you know, his entire story was either about fighting, sex, family fights, gangs, they're going to be like, what? And you're going to go Shakespeare, they're going to go, oh, please. No, really. And then you start giving them examples, they're sold. They are sold. Right? I mean, I hated Shakespeare, but when I found all that, I was like, that's how I'm going to sell it. Let them see why it matters. Miss Taylor, this is gay. Yeah, okay, maybe so. There's my diffuser. However, why would you ever need to use Shakespeare? Well, exactly, Miss Taylor, why would you need to use Shakespeare? Well, let's think about it. You know that commercial that you saw that said, out, out, damn spot? Well, yeah, the Tide commercial, yeah, that's Shakespeare. What? All of a sudden you're connecting it. Oh, get it? Okay. You know, and then they start to relate, and then you go, okay, Miss Taylor's not so crazy after all. I mean, I was, but be organized. Steve mentioned this. Lesson plan, I mean, some of my lesson plans were seriously on the back of napkins, and it wasn't, you know, objective and all that, but it was, this is the activity, this is what I need, this is, but let me tell you, if I had that, I was organized and I could get stuff done. If I came to school and hit the ground without my plan, I was in a sheer anxious state. Because, and they read it, they know. They can read you. They're like, what do they say about, like animals can read your energy? Kids do too. And they, you know that. Because if you're in a bad mood, they tend to really play on that pretty badly. Plan for everything. Here's where some of the newer teachers who are very structured, this is where it throws them off. Okay? I had a teacher, I was a department chair, and this lady had been in business for 25 years. She looked like Mimi from Drew Carey.
Oh my gosh.
Loved her, but she was over the top, and I'm convinced her husband was Russian mob. But she, because I'd say, what does your husband do? And she'd go, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, well, you drive a Mercedes, you've got a nice car. What does he do? I'm not really sure. And I'm like, yeah, he's mob. But she, with her big blonde hair and all this, she was a ditto queen. She used all the paper for our department in the first month. Yeah. And I was kind of like, that's not going to work. You can't really do that. But if anything, you know, fire drill that was unplanned, because, you know, inevitably the kids pull them, she would have a meltdown. Because that 10 minutes out there screwed up her entire schedule. And I'm like, you gotta relax. You gotta let it go. It's not the end of the world that you didn't get all the way through this lesson. It's okay. You've got to plan for that. You've got to be okay with it. And realize that you can cram it in somewhere else. So be ready for it and don't let it throw you off. Because if somebody comes in that door and goes, Miss Taylor, and I go, what? All of them just read that I'm ticked off. Stay calm. Break it up. Don't make them sit as long as we're making you sit. Transition frequently and smoothly. Key, we talk about timing. I'll get to that. Know your objectives and standards. I know this is drilled because you guys do this in teacher ed, in the teaching credential program. You know what your objectives are, you know your Common Core standards, you know what you're trying to reach to do, right? Got it? Activities, what are you going to do? That's where I come in. Know your kids. Maybe have 2 or 3 different activities to achieve the same objective. Does it take a little planning? Yes, but not that much. I was the laziest person in history. Okay? So I get not wanting to do too much. But if you have 3 activities and you let them pick, I don't know if you've all probably heard in child development, if they get a choice, they have a little more ownership. Okay? When you tell them this is what you're going to do, it's not quite a sell pitch. Okay? But if I said, okay, here's 3 activities, this is the objective we're going for today, I need this, mastery, whatever you say. And then you say, okay, you get to choose which one of these you do, but it needs to be done, and I need it as an exit ticket when you walk out the door. I guarantee you're going to have buy-in. Guaranteed. Because you're giving them choice, and you're giving them a little individuality. Like, if I'm not a writer, don't make me write. I mean, I'm going to get the writing from that kid one way or another, but it doesn't have to be something that is so ominous that they give up. Do you need to accommodate? We talked about the kid, about how my anatomy teacher accommodated me. That was probably extreme, but keep in mind, I'm trying to think of an example, but if some kid just lost his father, you probably don't want to pose something about death. So be aware. And how will you assess your success? Same thing with any lesson plan. How are you going to check for understanding? How are you going to make sure that it was mastered? But this is the big thing for me. Keep it interesting, keep it varied, and timing. If you figure attention span is supposed to be 1 minute for every year, that means a 15-year-old supposedly can sit for 15 minutes.
Woohoo!
Yeah. That means I'm supposed to sit for 50? Yeah, never. Break it up, and don't keep doing the same thing. If you walk into my class and I have a journal entry, that's one activity that you're working on, right? So what I had is you would come in, you do a journal entry, and then that's when I would take roll if I remember to take roll, and all that kind of stuff, and then we transition. I don't give them 30 minutes. I give them 10. And then I remind them, you got 5 more minutes. You got 4 more minutes. And then you wrap it up. Give them a warning, wrap it up. Break it up. Then the next thing I'm going to do is probably going to involve some kind of talking for them at their tables. And then the next activity, I'm going to probably do a little talking. And then I'm going to have them get up. And the we do is going to be something physical. Utilize different brain activities. Think about if somebody just like me droning on and on, you're all going to fall asleep. So don't do it to your kids. Steve, it's you.
Yes, it is. All right, did you know when you come over and look at something that it's human nature to find out the one thing that is wrong? So I want you to look at your partners. No, I'm just kidding. It's our natural inclination to find the one thing that is wrong. Okay, so now imagine that you're helping somebody, and you have your hand up, and you come over and you look at their paper, and you say, oh, you screwed up. You don't say that word, right? But that's what you mean. You screwed up when you, right? Oh, I see your mistake. That's the first words out of our mouth, right? Now put yourself in the chair of that student. I don't really good at math. I hate math. I don't understand why I have to do math. I don't understand, teacher. Oh, see, I see your mistake. See, there it is. Confirmation that what? I'm stupid and don't understand math. So I want you to try to break that habit with these 3 techniques. The first thing I want you to do is praise their student for what they've already done. Now maybe it's they got the paper out. They put number 1 on there. They got their name in the right-hand corner. Okay, whatever it is. They've got step 1 done. So you're going to praise them. And then you're going to give a short prompt. And next time we come back, we're going to look at steps So you'll be able to say, I see that you've done steps 1 through 3 really well. Look at step 4 on the board, and I'm going to come back. And then you leave. Because here's the tendency. Y'all have amazing hearts. You love your kids. You wouldn't be here tonight if you didn't. Okay? You love your kids. Right? And so what are you going to do when you see that your students messed up? You're going to spend time there. How much time? The average is 10 minutes. Okay, let's go back to day 1 in our class. Here we are, and right here is the red zone, remember? And I'm sitting here helping her for 10 minutes. What's going on all around the classroom? They're in the green zone, party time! And then because I'm human, and I'm hearing all this distraction, and my heart's bleeding, I want to make sure she's got it right, but I'm hearing all this going on. What's going on in my brain? Why? Right. The fight-flight reflex just kicked in. You're being rude. You're being disrespectful. You're interfering with my heart because I want to pour my heart out and give this student all the help she needs. So what am I going to do? I just lost it. I've gone from the neocortex down to the alligator brain, the reptilian brain, the brainstem. What am I going to do?
Reacts.
I'm going to go to muscle memory. How did your mom get after you when you were getting on her nerve? What did she say? Come on, you could probably say it with me. I am sick and tired.
And wait until your father gets home.
Right? If I have to say it one more time, if I have to pull this car over, right? If I have to stop the car, you're getting out, walking, whatever. What are we doing now? My voice is up, angry, and I'm using that 3-letter word we talked about at the beginning of the year. I'm nagging. Is that effective? No, and all I want to do is help her. But if I camp out here for 10 minutes, what's going to happen? I lose control of the classroom. The second problem is this. If I camp out here for 10 minutes, and she figures out, hey, every time I don't understand, all I have to do is what? Raise my hand and say, I don't understand. How many times have you walked over a student and said, well, what don't you understand? I don't understand anything. All right. So now guess what? Tomorrow, after 15 minutes of direct instruction on how to do a parabolic arc, I'm going to come over here. I don't understand. What don't you? I don't understand anything. So my bleeding heart, I love her. I listen to my student, right? I'm going to do what? Reteach the entire lesson all over again. How many of you have repeat helpless hand raisers in your class?
Everyone probably does.
Check it out. You're not going to like what I'm going to tell you. A lot of that is on you. You are enabling that behavior, and then when they're out of your class, you complain about them. That's the classic enabler. Okay? She's going to continue. Now she's figured out, I don't have to listen while he's blah, blah, blah up there. I can doodle. Right? Remember Charlie Brown, the Snoopy? You probably don't remember. The teacher sounded like this to Charlie Brown. All right, do pages number 42. I don't understand. Okay, I love my students. I'm going to do this. Every day, I'm reteaching what I just taught to 6 students, because they're always the same 6, right? Is there any wonder why you're exhausted when you get home? You're working twice as hard as you need to. Okay? So, I'm going to give you a little bit tonight, and it says let's practice. I have to go in 5 minutes, so we're not going to practice. But we will practice next time we come back, because we're going to learn how to do lesson plans where we're going to concentrate on step by step. Okay? For instance, and I'll show you what I mean by step. If I wrote 14 into 2,840, and I said, okay, class, how many times is 14 going to 28?
Twice.
2 times 14 is 28. Okay, class, what do I do now? I subtract. I bring down the 4. Class, does 14 go into 4? The answer is, so I put a 0. I bring down the 0. 14 goes into 40. How many times? 3 times. I do the math. 12. And that's 2 times, huh? All right. You get my point? Okay. and then there's a remainder, and we'll figure that out later. All right, now I come back to help over here. Oh, how you did steps 1, 2, and 3 perfectly. Just make sure you look at the board and do step 4. Tell me where step 4 is.
Subjective.
Is there a step 4 up there? Well, I had step 4. I said step 4. One of the things we're going to learn next time is the difference between short-term memory and long-term memory. And check it out. Short-term memory tricks you, the teacher, into thinking it's long-term memory. And I have a couple of quizzes for you. We did one already. You'll find out. We're going to show you that short-term memory is not long-term memory. But I want you to remember what I just told you about. We have a human tendency to do what? Find the mistake. When we come and talk to the student, what is the first thing that comes out of our mouth? Identifying the mistake, which reconfirms to the student, I'm done. Instead, I want you to think about where are they, what have they done correctly so far, give them a little praise. Then I'm going to teach you how to do a prompt based on the step, and then I want you to leave. How long should this last? About 40 seconds. How much time are you spending camping out with a student? About 10 minutes. Okay? We're going to learn about praise, prompt, and
Well,
leave.
by doing that, you're creating independence.
That's correct.
They're taking ownership of their own learning. They're becoming independent learners. As long as you don't enable.
That's the tendency. All right, wrap this up. You guys disappointed that we have to get out 15 minutes early?
No, you know it. All right, look for signs that you're losing them. Just look around.
I'm going to call Kent Albertson and tell him that I let you out 15 minutes.
If you notice that your thing is flopping, we were talking about failure. If you notice your lesson or your talk or whatever is flopping, stop and do something else. Just go, okay, I can see I lost you guys. All right, we're moving on. Have a plan B. Okay? This is an example of a 90-minute block. Students enter, they do a journal. Give them 10 minutes. And you stick to that 10 minutes. I've been in so many classrooms lately, and it's just kind of like, are you guys done? You guys done? You give them, you set it. Introduce the objectives and the schedule. I don't know if you guys have to do that, but we had to have our objectives on the board. And but the kids need to know the schedule. For many of them, that gives them peace. I do. If you're teaching your lesson, we do. Activities in groups, get them up, moving around, doing something different. You do. They can do some work at their desk that is independent. Okay? And then check for understanding. You can have them share out. Hold them accountable. Because otherwise that kid is going to sit there and doodle. Make them hold, I'm going to call on one of you from each table, and you're going to have to report out, and you don't know who it's going to be. And if the kid says, well, I didn't do it, then you say, well, you better make something up right now. Okay? And then give them a concluding activity or have something as an exit ticket. Like, if we just did an activity, I want you to give me 2 sentences on what you learned from that activity, or who took the lead, what role did you have, something simple, but it's something they have to do to hand you to walk out. Okay? And then class dismissed. That is a 90-minute block. That's what I taught on.
This PowerPoint's in Google Classroom, so you can access this. It's in the classroom.
But break it up. Do you see how it's broken up? It's not the same thing over and over and over again. And remember, 10%, they will remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear, 70% of what they say, and 90% of what they do and say. A lot of information, but basically look at the bottom 2, and that's what you want to incorporate more of. And I was really good about citing my source. Here's your homework. Create a questionnaire. I want to see the questionnaire, and we'd like to see the results. Okay? I mean, not the answers. I don't want you to do that, but I would like for you to say, well, I found out that, this many of my kids is this many of my kids are interested in that. I want you to have a general idea of information about your kids. And then determine your kids' learning styles, whether that means you give them a simple test, or if you can delineate that by just what you know about your kids, then that's fine too.
It's due Super Bowl Sunday.
Aww. Sorry. We'll do it before you drink beer. Okay. There you go.
You don't know what I said.
There's the evals, and I don't know when our next meeting is. Oh, February 5th. Super Bowl. Monday. Super Bowl Monday. Speaking of which, I have a Georgia Bulldog fan and I was crushed.
In a row off.
Yeah, there's a Monday and then there's a Monday, Tuesday.
And you should see all my friends because I'm from Georgia. I grew up there.
What?
And they're all like, they all had these huge parties and they catered them and all that. And now they're just literally
better and better and worse at the same time.
And then there's spring break at the end of March and then there's nothing.
such a good game though.
One thing at a time. I don't see any 4-day weekends in February. What else is this?
Alright, there's a holiday and then there's a